It would have been in the summer of 2019. I forced myself to get up and go outside, and we took our two young kids for a hike in the Lost Pines Forest here in Bastrop, Texas. And I'm walking up this hill, and I have my youngest son in a backpack, and this idea hits me. I'm Ryan Holiday. I've been writing about Stoicism now for more than a decade and a half. I've talked to everyone from the NBA to the NFL, special forces to sitting senators. Because these things can kind of be mysterious to people who don't write books, I thought I would show you what a book looks like from conception to publication and all the little building blocks that went into producing what is my next book. You never sit down and decide to come up with an idea. The ideas just kind of pop into your head, and this sort of freak, random chance encounter can change not just the trajectory of several years of your life, but the whole arc of your career. And so I was walking through this forest, and the idea to do a book about courage pops into my head. Or not even that, just thinking about courage just happened. And it struck me that courage is this thing we admire so much, and yet it's extraordinarily rare. Physical courage, moral courage, we lionize it, and yet I would say very few of us sort of go through the world thinking about courage or making courage a priority. So when you first have an idea, there's just a lot of thinking. It's just sort of brainstorming. In this case, it was interesting because I wasn't just doing a book about courage, I was actually doing 4 books. I sold a 4-book series on the cardinal virtues: courage, temperance, justice, wisdom. So 1 book a year for roughly 4 years. Writers will sometimes talk about this idea of writer's block. Oh, I'm jammed, I have writer's block. I don't think writer's block exists. Jerry Seinfeld said that writer's block is a made-up, phony excuse for not doing your work. I think a better way to think about it is that writer's block means you don't have the material. So I do all my research on 4x6 note cards. And actually for this project, I had a special note card made. I went and got my own note cards custom printed that say courage, temperance, justice, wisdom at the top, because I'm researching not just this book, but the whole series. So for me, the note cards are the gathering of material. And this is quotes, this is stories, these are statistics, these are studies, these are themes, ideas that I want to tackle. So before I can write, I have to gather all the things that I have to say. Writing is easy. How you're going to assemble the words is like the least difficult part of doing a book. It's the fun part, actually. The hard part, the most essential part, the part that you can't do the other stuff without, is figuring out what it is that you have to say and what support you have to make that compelling and interesting. I decided the first third of the book was going to be about fear, because courage is the triumph over fear. The second part of the book would be about courage, when we risk something, when we actually do something that's scary or unconventional or brave. And then the final third of the book was the highest level of courage. This is like heroism. So it takes courage to put your ass on the line, but I wanted the third part of the book to be about like when you put your ass on the line for someone else. So once I sort of loosely have the book into these 3 parts, now I can organize the information I have into the sub-chapters, and then my job as a writer day in and day out is to pick up my stack of note cards for the day and sit down and write that chapter. So I think this book was like roughly like 30, 35 chapters. So every day I had to sit down and work on one of those chapters. There's a line in Meditations where Marcus Aurelius talks about, he says, assemble your life action by action, no one can stop you from that. So as you're writing, you have to realize like, I can show up today and do my job. No one can stop me from that. I sort of got into this rhythm. I would get up early, take my kids for a run or a walk, spend time outside, come here to the office, spend a few hours working on it, handle some other business, go home, jump in the pool. Oftentimes I would come home just in time to take my kids for a nap, ride, or run again. By turning away from the material, ideas would come to me that I would then jot down on note cards and tackle the day before. I just knew I had to show up and do my job that day. There's a great rule in writing, like just a couple crappy pages a day, 2 crappy pages, 4 crappy pages, whatever it is, until eventually you have your completed draft. I'm a little shaky right now because I just finished the first draft of Courage is Calling. I think it may be the best thing that I've done. I feel like it came from somewhere. One of the weird things about books is you sit down to write, but you don't know where it's coming from. The words just come. You do the reading. Stephen Pressfield talks about the muses, but this is the fastest that I've ever done a book. It's come the most naturally. I don't know. I send all my stuff to my writing partner, Niels Parker, who does the first pass on all my books. It's in some ways a relief. You've been working on it and then you send it to them and then there's nothing for you to do because you can't be working on the draft while they are. It's not the same anymore. Then it's there and you're just, red ink and notes and notes. As you're writing a book, you have to have this sort of openness to feedback and criticism and listen to people. And at the same time, you have to have a really strong sense of what you're trying to do and how you want it to be. And if you didn't, then you have no business doing a book. You have to address the criticism, anticipate that other readers are going to agree, and then adjust, but you have to do it on your own terms, according to your own conscience and your own writing sort of vision. Stephen King says, kill your darlings. And on this book, I was cutting chapters all the way up until like 2 days before we went to the printer. I have a whole list of the first pass edits that I'm doing here on Courage is Calling. You see here, this is the notes of things that I wrote as I was doing it that I now have to go back through and review. I think I'm gonna cut this chapter, and I think I'm gonna cut this chapter. I'm stressed about it, but I don't know. Anyways, you can see all the notes here. So these were chapters I was refining and taking notes, but it was only when I zoomed way out and read it for the last time that I was like, oh, this just doesn't need to be in here at all. And one of the things I do when I'm asking for notes, this is something I always ask, is like, I always go like, what didn't you like? What didn't work? What should you cut? And so that was how, as I went through the book, as we got closer to publication, I was able to tighten it and tighten it and tighten it till it's as lean as it could be. To make a book that exists, that's like a whole journey, but I sort of liken it to like you finish a marathon and then they grab you by the hand and you think they're taking you to the medal stand and then you're done. And in fact, they're just leading you to the beginning of another marathon. So like you finish the book, you're done, and then it's like you have to record the audiobook. And I couldn't do it in a studio again because of the pandemic, so I had to do that in my office. The AC was broken, it was like a bazillion degrees. You have to make cover decisions, you have to make marketing decisions, you have to figure out how you're gonna promote it, you have to do all this stuff. Churchill talks about how he's like, you finish a book, you battle with it, and then at some point you kill it and you fling the carcass to the public. It's like this private thing that you've worked on, again, mostly solitary way for months and months and months, in this building with no one around as the world was literally at arm's length from each other. And then you're like, here, you should read this. This is a 2,000-year-old Roman penknife that very fittingly I'm going to use to open something I'm very excited about. These are the first copies of my new book, all about Roman virtues. Courage is Calling. My first book, I was probably 10% satisfied with my effort in the work, like 10% like, I know this is good, I'm proud of it, and 90% waiting on bated breath, like, it's gonna be a bestseller. How many copies is it gonna sell? What are the reviews gonna say? Are people gonna like it? Is it gonna be successful? And I like to think that as I've gone on, I've flipped that slowly, slowly, slowly. The Stoic dichotomy of control is so important. What's up to you? The effort you put in, the creativity, the ideas, the dedication. You control everything up until it comes off the printer. There's so much that's out of your control. You gotta lock in just on the part you do. And I think it's something you learn by experience. Now comes the fun part. You get to go out and talk about it. But there's always a struggle for me on a project is I work so hard on it and I care so much about it. I want as many people to read it and enjoy it as possible. So you feel obligated. On the other hand, if you really love the work, every minute I spend doing an interview, shooting a video, whatever, is just me not sitting down working on the next book. I think most great writers know as soon as you finish a book, you gotta start the next one. That's how you stay humble. That's how you stay committed. That's how you stay in fighting shape. So there's this tension as you go into the marketing and the release of, I really would rather be writing. It takes courage to work on something in private for so long and then put it out there. You have to open yourself up to criticism and feedback. You have to see if it works. And that's always the scary part on a launch is the day before it comes out. There's nothing you can do and you're just waiting. If you want to learn more about Stoic philosophy totally for free, you can sign up for our Daily Stoic email. It's one free email every morning, the best of Stoic wisdom, dailystoic.com/email.